Hello and welcome back to Frame by Frame, a Saffron Screen podcast. Um, I'm Amelie. It's nice to be back. I wasn't on the podcast last episode, but it's nice to be back and talk about some of the upcoming films we've got this month. Riley can't be here. I can't be here this month, but it will be me and Zach talking about some of our favorite releases and re-releases that are coming to the cinema this month. As we go into spring, we've got lots of exciting things on. We have the Oscar winners season, the re-releases, and we have a lot of great upcoming kids films in this Easter break. The movie that Zach is going to be talking about today is The Zone of Interest, which is an Oscar winner. So I'll pass you over to Zach to talk about The Zone of Interest.
Okay, so the Zone of Interest. This is a film. It's written and directed by Jonathan Glazer, who you might know. He's made four films in his, I think, sort of 25-year career. He's not doesn't come out
Oh,
very frequently.
wow.
So he's made Sexy Beast, Birth, Under the Skin, and now The Zone of Interest, which is his first film in 10 years. And he sort of has that kind of perfect career in terms of he comes out of the woodwork like every so often, makes a really, really good film, gets loads of acclaim, and then he kind of just like disappears.
Disappears.
And
Yep.
yeah, no one talks about him for ages. And it's just kind of like he kind of has a perfect career that, no
Yeah.
one's on him to do stuff,
Hmm.
obviously. Um, but this film, The Zone of Interest, it's a German language international production. So it was actually also partly a British collaboration. Film 4 helped fund this. And as Emily said, this is an awards favorite. So it was one of three films at the last Oscar ceremony to actually win multiple Oscars. So here it won for Best Foreign Language Film and Best Sound. It also did decently well at the BAFTAs, um, oddly winning the combination of Outstanding British Film and Best Foreign Language Film, which is quite an odd combination because obviously it's all
Hmm.
in German, but it does have British funding, so it's eligible for that award. And of course, and it's actually Jonathan Glazer, I should mention, is also a British director, so he's one of our best. So this is a loose adaptation of the novel by Martin Amis, um, which is called The Zone of Interest, and this film focuses on the life of the Auschwitz, so it's set during World War II, focuses on the life of the Auschwitz commandant Rudolf Höss and his wife Hedwig. Hedwig is played by Sandra Hüller here, who was nominated for Anatomy of a Fall for Best Actress as well. She might as well have been also nominated for this. Her performance is very good. But Rudolph and Hedwig live alongside their children in a home that is quite literally attached to the Auschwitz concentration camp. So there's literally a wall with barbed wire that literally separates their garden from Auschwitz. And Hus is the man who is in charge of Auschwitz. And it's quite interesting because this is a change to use these real names and these real people because Rudolf Hus was a real man. Um, because the novel that is adapted from uses the figures who in you know sort of has a stand-in for Hus. Like it uses fictional names. It is a
Yeah.
novel. Um, and yeah, they sort of just live their life next to this camp. And oddly enough, there's actually very little more to the story than that.
Mm.
They sort of do just live their life here. And it's for being a Holocaust movie, it's a very oddly mundane one.
Yes.
Um, so I mean, it's the type of thing we never even see into Auschwitz at any point in the movie. Um, we only hear it. And I think Mark Commode, I think it was Mark Commode who said this, who put it really well. And he said there's sort of two movies that are going on in this film, which is there's the one that you see and there's the one that you hear. Um,
Oh,
because
wow.
we hear the horrors of
Yeah.
Auschwitz the whole time. We hear the yelling, the kind of churning, um, of the bodies being disposed of, and the worst horrors of the last century going on right next to a kid playing with his toys. It is really mundane, and most of the film is like that, and it's just very unsettling because you can hear all this going on, and it's almost like they barely react to it, and yeah, they act as any family would. They kind of have this, marital arguments between the husband and wife. She wants to stay with the home. She's attached to this home that is literally attached to Auschwitz. She doesn't want to move. He's, oh, I've got a job offer somewhere else. I need to, we need to move. That kind of thing, which is, it's a classic argument you would see between a husband and a wife in a movie or in real life, even. It makes you see the banality of evil and how similar these kind of people are to you. Again, this sort of stuff like, the Hedwig will have her friends round and they have tea and they kind of gossip about the friend who's not there. And like
Mm.
that's, it's so human. Yet you know what these people believe and you know what they
Yeah.
don't care about. And the whole kind of film is and how it's directed and how it's shot is kind of in support of this. So it's very objective. So the interesting thing about the production of this film is that there are about ten cameras in the film on the set of this house, which are all operated from a distance. They were kind of placed in their rigs, set up, and none of the crew were actually there, basically in the set with the actors.
Oh,
So the,
wow.
yeah, and so the actors were kind of basically unwatched or felt
Mhm.
kind of unwatched. There was no one on set with them. They just sort of had to get on with the scene as the cameras were sort of remotely operated through a quite complex system. The way that Lucas Zal, who's the Polish cinematographer, he put it as like Nazi Big Brother, is how he put it. So it's literally like they just kind of get
Mm.
on with it. That you just see them acting in this house, and and that's obviously kind of an effect for the actors, so they don't, they're not bigging up their part, they're not doing anything, they're just kind of going about it. And there's very flat, natural lighting. They just shot midday quite often, so it's very dull. There's no sort of acknowledgement visually of,
Yeah.
the kind of horrific nature of this. And you're actually hard pressed to find a close up in this film. It's, it's basically all wide angle kind of stuff, all kind of shot at a distance. It's objective. So don't try and make you sympathize with Nazis or anything like. It's not a film like that, which tries to, oh, what if we went inside the head of a Nazi? And it's not that. It's
Yeah.
what if you sat in the room and you were a fly on the wall and you could just watch what these people were doing in their everyday life. And again, this is actually kind of a thing that was inspired by real history and research that Glazer had done to it. So Husser's diary is quite famous because for every day that he was in charge of Auschwitz, he had to write a diary entry. And the odd thing that's noted about it is that he was quite normal outwardly. He's this guy who has his mind warped. I mean, there's actually a scene later where he sort of talks about he sees like a room full of people and he kind of can only think about the most efficient way to kill them. But at the same time, like say Husser's diary, which is real, which is kind of the inspiration this film, this book probably wouldn't exist without this diary, is he's writes about how he cares for his children. He objects to cruelty to animals and things like that, which we kind of all would. But yet, yeah, he's letting this atrocity kind of go on, and in fact, is directly involved in it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it doesn't have that sentimentality of a kind of Schindler's List or a One Life, which was very popular recently at Saffron Screen. So if you're kind of looking for that kind of thing, it's not. It's really there's no film to compare it to or Holocaust
Yeah.
movie to compare it to. It's a very unique treatment.
I still haven't seen this, and even from the concept, even from what I knew before you've explained it all, it really is such a jarring way to make a movie, peering in, but also hearing the horrors, not seeing anything that's going on, but you're seeing this normality, you're kind of being blinded to the rest of it. You obviously know that these are horrible people, but you're seeing them in their
Hmm.
normality.
Yeah, I mean, it's that idea. So Jonathan Glazer's talked about the concept of, and I think the producers for the film and things have talked about the concept of like selective empathy is what the
Mm,
film is about. The fact that these people, like they say, like they care for their children and they,
yes.
care for their own family life and all of these things, but they don't care for the people who are being murdered, eh, right over the wall. And yeah, and again, the sound design is so important in doing that, in generating that feeling.
Mm,
And so it did win best sound. And with the sound design, it's quite interesting because there are these elements of it which are just, you would just hear these rumbles, these dark rumbles kind of off screen. But it's also like there's this kind of art house abstractness with it as well.
Yes.
It really wants you to focus on the sound. So literally, when it opens from the opening, I don't want to spoil it almost because I think it's a really interesting way of opening the film. But the way they sort of condition you right
Mm.
from the start to be listening.
Yeah.
The film sort of forces you to listen because if you do just watch this film, you will be missing something big time. And so the film kind of makes you listen.
Yes.
And this is part of more of its obviously like we said, it's kind of a jarring tone, but it almost for my money, then starts to a little bit jar its own tone. So it's got this
Okay.
mundane strangeness to it.
Yes.
But then there are also these really weird art house things. So in terms of sound design, we also hear kind of weird, kind of almost supernatural sounding voices at some
Mm.
points, which are unsettling and do make me feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, because it's dealing with real history, it can sometimes feel odd that those were chosen. And it's
Yeah.
similar. There are some visual things like that. There's sort of this sequence which is shot in kind of like infrared, which is completely or looks kind of infrared. So it's all kind of white imagery, where it's completely divorced from the rest of the film. And there's kind of a weird bit where it kind of cuts the things in the house and the whole screen goes red. And there are some sort of odd sort of moments of where kind of very much art house techniques are kind of inserted into this middle of this already very subversive film.
Do
And for
you,
me,
I
sorry,
was gonna say, do you think that they fit well? Is that
I
where we're going with that?
I think that people have had like conflicted opinions on this.
Mm.
I personally think they detract a little bit.
Yeah.
I would say not overall. I think more it's just weird because it's real historical subject matter, which is
Yes.
obviously very
Of course.
sensitive. I should point out Jonathan Glazer is Jewish himself, so it's not, you know, someone who doesn't have sort of a personal
Glorification
connection
or
to the
anything.
story.
Yeah.
No, no. To me, it feels, yeah, it feels like for me, it kind of detracts. I don't like
Okay.
that because I thought it's had sort of a subversive, very interesting idea, which took, took itself in a different way from most Holocaust movies. That's equal, and it's equally powerful in that way.
Mm.
I didn't think it needed these art house kind of
Yes.
insertions. That being said, I don't think they detract greatly from the film,
Yeah.
and they do passively kind of still make you feel unsettled. So it still is doing the job of what they were intending with everything else
Yeah.
anyway. But it was one of those films. It's a film you probably won't cry at the end of, but I saw it with my friend who actually he like me, he's studying film and he's actually really into sound design. So he
Mm.
was pretty amazed by it. Um, we both just sat there for
Yes.
the entirety of the credits, and we
Yeah.
just sat and we didn't move because it was just like one of those films that kind of takes you, and your kind of knees, you start to feel tense, kind of stiff. You don't want to move just
Mm.
because it's
Mm.
such an unsettling experience. Kind of like really, really, really is chilling. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the effect that you're gonna go away with. So you're probably not gonna get that kind of you're not going to be crying and you're not going to get that emotional satisfaction that you get out of, despite how tough to watch films like One Life or Schindler's List are. You don't, with this one, you don't get that kind of big cathartic moment
Yeah.
at the end of it.
No.
It just kind of, in a good way, kind of just fizzles out to
Mm.
nothing. Yeah, I was really impressed by this film. And yeah, I think it deserved its Oscar wins. Again, one of three films at the Oscars to actually win multiple Oscars, and it only won two. But yeah, and I should say the performances are very naturalistic and in with that kind of mundaneness, that objectivity. And like I said, I actually think Sandra Hüller could have been nominated for Best
Yeah.
Actress for this film rather than
Yes.
Anatomy of a Fall, which she was also very good in. Um, it's just a beautifully like naturalistic performance. You completely believe her as this sort of house
Mm.
proud woman. Yeah, it's a really fascinating film. I think you do need to be kind of prepared to know what you're watching when
Oh.
you go into
Oh,
it.
definitely.
Yeah, and it's probably not also a film that's gonna entertain you as such or keep your
Exactly.
mind stimulated. It
Exactly.
will because it's so weird, but it's not giving you things
Mm.
to like even those other films we just talked about, the Auschwitz films, they are or Holocaust films, I should say. they are still feeding you a narrative that's constant and is kind of stimulating, whereas this isn't. So maybe if you're not thinking about it, if you're not into it, you could find it boring,
Mm,
but I would find it hard that someone who's really
yes.
engaging with it, and especially engaging with the history and the fact that this was a real thing, comes away like that. And I think it is about 90 minutes. It's for the mundaneness of the story.
Yeah.
It's a sensible length. It knows what it's doing.
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, I'd really recommend this. Obviously, just go in prepared, and I think you'll have probably some very interesting discussions afterwards with whoever you go to see it with. Another film that we have on, which will also provoke discussions, but in a very different light. Again, this is a tonally a much different film, is American Fiction, which Amelie is going to talk a bit more about now.
So, American Fiction is this year's winner for Best Adapted Screenplay, by its writer and director called Jefferson, Jefferson,
I believe it's
probably,
Jefferson.
probably. Um, I really, really enjoyed this movie. I didn't know much about it at all going in. I know that it is a star-studded cast, but this is how you do a star-studded cast without it feeling like a star-studded cast. It's got Jeffrey Wright. It has Tracy Ellis Ross, who was in Blackish, and it has Adam Brody in it for a little cameo, and it has Sterling K.
Mhm.
Brown as well. Yeah, it really isn't what you would expect from piling all of these big names into a movie. It just feels very natural. Jeffrey Wright plays Monk Ellison, who is a writer, and he is looking to explore and kind of disconnect from what is expected of him as a Black writer. He is in the midst of kind of the modern world of Black writers being forced to kind of give their trauma a platform. And he doesn't want to do that. He wants to write his own stories. He wants to be just a writer. He doesn't want to be known as a Black writer, for what that means in the modern setting. He's realizing that his manuscripts are not selling well because they aren't kind of feeding into what is expected of him from primarily white people, primarily a white audience and white publishers. So he takes this leave of absence from his university, and he takes a break and he goes back home to take care of his family, see his family, try and reconnect with his family. This is a film that I feel has two separate plots. It's got this
Mm.
plot of his family drama that is going on. His sister is ill, and his mother is slowly becoming less aware of who she is. It also has this plot of uh, a writer who is trying to become successful again, who is trying to figure out what he wants to be. And as frustrated as he is with the way that he's being perceived as a Black writer, we somehow stumble onto this in script skit about Monk writing a satire book, a book that is feeding into all of these stereotypes, all of these things that are wanted from Black writers. And it somehow becomes a bestseller. The publishers are raving for it. And I think that is what makes this film so naturally funny, is the juxtaposition between his hard family troubles and how he is trying to be as a writer. I think it's brilliantly done, and it was just a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
And like you say, it doesn't try hard for the jokes, because there are comedies which are kind of are
Exactly that.
comedies, so like a Seth Rogen film, for example. Like they are comedies. They're going in for the jokes
And it's
hard
not that.
all the
It's
time.
not that.
Yeah, it's very much not that. It's a comedy drama.
I
It's
think
it
it, yeah,
it fuses those both.
it makes a comedy of the situation that it's in.
Yeah.
And yeah, and because as this situation escalates, as more and more people want to buy this book, as it's it gets put up for a literary award, things become funnier as time goes on. And in the background you have this wonderful story of him coming back to his hometown, trying to reconnect with his family after a tragedy, and falling in love. It's just a really nice film to watch. And I
Mm.
think it's really self-aware of what it wants to be, and yeah, just very naturally funny.
I wondered, you obviously have been talking a lot about like these two different sides, like the two different stories. I wondered how well did you think they integrated? Because I did see, and I've partly felt this a bit. Some critics have been who even like the film, sort of do think that almost the film was unnecessarily broadened out to a family drama. I wondered how you felt about that and how felt well you kind of felt those two stories sort of interconnected.
See, I have seen that, and I think that for me personally, it worked. The fact that they are quite like extremely different stories, I felt like it was nice to have that. I haven't seen that in a film for a while, where these two stories are completely separate. It felt like a TV show to me, which I think is maybe why some people were quite critical of it, because it feels like a TV drama in that sense, in the fact that there are two extremely contrasting storylines. But I really enjoyed it that way. I think it brought something new. I haven't seen that in a while, and I think that it felt like I was having a break from the family drama when I was being fed all of this story about him as a writer, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that you say about TV drama because one of the things people say about TV dramas now in particular is that we can get to know a character for so long, like
Mm,
we get to know Walter White from A to Z, and we see him change and we see him develop and we see who his friends are, whatever. And you do get that with this in terms of
yeah.
you hear the way he talks to his family. So Monk isn't just sort of a writer who is sort of there for the point of this plot and the point of this satire. He is kind of a real human being who has a mother. He has a like he has a brother, and you
Mhm.
see what his relationship's like with his with his mother and his
Yeah.
brother and all of that. It's kind
And
of
I think in the way that it's set up, we see very different sides of him. You see him with the publishers, you see him with all of these different people, and you see how he acts with different people in his life.
mm.
I do understand where critics are coming from, because it does at some points feel like it doesn't know what it wants to be. But I didn't find that to be an issue when I was viewing it. I still enjoyed it just as much.
What's that idea of like the facade you're kind of like hitting on in terms of like the fact
Yes.
that he in his family, like
Yes,
the way he's seen in his
exactly.
family, and then the way he kind of then in the next scene has to kind of act to these publishers because
Mhm.
obviously he's written under a pseudonym, so he's literally a different person,
Yeah.
and sort of like I guess that in itself is making a comment on the kind of fakeness of
Well,
the
exactly. Yeah.
commercialization of like a black identity, the fact that he
Yeah.
puts on this fake black identity and then he has his he is a black person with a real identity, and when he goes
Mhm.
back and he has all this family drama.
And
um
I guess the writer's plot side is who is what white publishers want him to be, how the
mhm.
writing world sees him, and you get this very real version of him with his family.
Yeah, and like I say, all the actors as well in this do a really convincing job. I
Oh,
did have
they're
some
brilliant.
reservations about this side of the story in terms of I think it sometimes wandered a little bit. I think it kind of knew
Mhm.
what it was doing in the sense it was wandering. For my money, it did wander a bit too much. But all the characters are really convincing and
Yes.
funny because of who they're played by and how they're played. I think Sterling K. Brown in particular, his brother, is really
I
funny,
mean,
really good in
Sterling
this
K.
film.
Brown is probably one of the best actors working at the moment, in my opinion. He's brilliant. It's always such a treat to have him on the screen, even if it's for a little while. I think he's just
Mhm.
brilliant. And yeah, he is so funny. No matter what he does, he finds a way to add some brilliant comedy in there.
And he was even quite funny in interviews about he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor,
Yes.
and he just said I'm comfortable losing to Robert Downey Jr. I
Yeah.
know. And it was just like you knew before the Oscars even happened. It's
Oh,
just like, yeah, I mean, it has a ton of great cast, like you say. I mean, Keith David, if you're old school, if you
yes.
like John
Yeah.
Carpenter films, if you're a big fan of the Halo series or Mass Effect, the video games, he's in them as well. But he's one of my favorite actors, and I was really
Mm.
glad to see him in here for a short moment, because we do get obviously we're saying we kind of get his intimate relationships with his family, but we also get an intimate sense of his writing when he is writing this kind of terribly stereotypical
Yeah,
satire book. We do see the sort of imaginings in his mind, you know. So we do get like a good sense of him as his writer
exactly.
identity as well.
It's I think the main reason that it feels the two stories feel so separate is because of how kind of mundane his family life is. But I feel like it was kind of delighting in the mundane, whereas this writer's
Yeah.
plot is there's huge things happening, things out of his control. Whereas obviously the family drama, things out of his control, but in a completely different way. It was nice to see that kind of contrast of him dealing with different parts of his life
Mm.
that he doesn't necessarily have control over.
Yeah, it's almost like, obviously there are turbulence in both kind of sides of the story, but one, like you say, it's kind of the mundane, almost more true to life in some way. And then the other one is sort of the high concept
Yes,
story. That was probably what they pitched to the
exactly that.
producers of this film. It's like, when a writer frustrated with how he's perceived goes, that sort of thing.
Mm.
That kind of pitch line would have been that kind of film. That film. And that's probably where more of the comedy comes from,
Yes.
because of that bizarre kind of, it's a high concept kind
Mhm.
of nature of that story. But it is funny throughout, and like you say, because we've kind of been talking about how it's the mundane and this and that, but it is quite a funny film without, yeah, like you say, without really trying
Yeah,
that hard at it.
I think that it would have worked as a story of just him as a writer. I think that
Hmm.
it would have worked perfectly fine and it would have been a perfectly entertaining story. But I did enjoy the family parts as well.
Obviously, kind of having to balance comedy and the drama and these sorts of problems. What did you think of Jeffrey Wright's performance? Because obviously he was nominated for Best Actor
Mm.
against Cillian Murphy, which is obviously, it was a tall task for
Yeah.
him to be able to beat that performance. But I kind of wondered what you thought, because obviously he was one of the five guys up there for that award.
I think he did a great job. I think that it was a very tall task to play these two different sides, and there's a lot. He plays a kind of guarded person very well. There's a lot of trauma deep within the surface of this character. Um, we still see him struggling immensely, even with his close family members, even with his girlfriend. He is still
Hmm.
very closed off, and I think he did a great job at. Um, I saw what was beyond the surface, even if he himself didn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, because he's very straight-laced kind of,
Exactly.
you might call him a square, like, kind of guy. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot more going on beneath the surface. And a lot of that rests on, I wasn't quite as impressed with Jeffrey Wright's performance as a lot of people, but the way you're talking about it, I can see more of it now, in terms of that tension of the fact that he is kind of doesn't care, I'm stoic,
Yes.
kind of, because he does get angry at the publishers, but otherwise he's very kind of
I think,
nonchalant about
yes,
things.
that anger is less directed towards his writing and the publishers and more directed towards this family
Mm.
trauma that he has going on. And I think that was really well done.
Sure, he mentioned Issa Rae in this movie as
Yes.
well, who sort of
Yes.
plays his rival of sorts, who does freely kind of write this stereotypical
Who
black
writes exactly
fiction.
how he exactly what he despises. She is the epitome of what he does not want to be,
And I mean, and people might remember her from playing President Barbie
of course.
recently, so she's on a bit of a role here. But yeah, they have a sort of very interesting dynamic, the two of them, when those kind of two actors kind of get to show off their acting chops against each other, is quite an interesting scene as well.
I mean, we get a whole conversation where they go back and forth of how he believes that she is everything wrong with what everything wrong with feeding into what white publishers want, and she is trying to defend her own book, and it's just a great scene.
Hmm. Did you? I was gonna say it won for best adapted screenplay.
Mm,
To me, I was quite surprised
I
because
think
it
so too.
beat Oppenheimer, which I thought was going to win. And obviously Barbie was a big one as well. I wondered if you felt it was, obviously I think everyone can kind of respect it was a well-written film. Do you feel it should have won there or not?
I honestly, watching it, was surprised that it was up for adapted screenplay. I even nominated. I think that it was brilliant. It's a film that I would watch to entertain myself. It's not necessarily something that I would have put on an Oscar radar had it not been nominated before I'd seen it, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. I think that the screenplay is brilliant. It Yes, I just don't know if it's as good as the ones that were nominated as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that's understandable. That's how I feel about it. It's a well-written script, it's a good satire, it's a very good idea. Although some people have actually kind of criticized it for not being as unique as it may sound, because there are actually films in the 80s which have done similar things. Spike
Yeah,
Lee has done a similar film, which is more about film and TV than books. But yeah, I think it was a well-written film, but I agree with you. Probably shouldn't have beaten some of the other ones on those lists. But to be
yeah.
fair, to be fair to it, Oppenheimer can't hog all the awards,
Well,
and
exactly
this
that.
was its only win. So
Speaking of Oppenheimer, it is one of the movies that we have coming back for the Oscar winners week, which is this weekend and next in the Easter break. We have quite a few of our Oscar winners that are being re-released. So we have The Holdovers on again, we have Oppenheimer on again, and obviously The Zone of Interest and American Fiction on. So those are just some of the Oscar winners that you can catch at Saffron Screen in upcoming weeks.
yeah, we're showing a lot of these Oscar winners, re-showing in some cases. Emily, I wonder what did you think of the Oscar ceremony, of who won what? I'm kind of interested. Obviously, it was as often happens, to be honest, one film kind of dominated.
Yep,
Here it was
it,
Oppenheimer with
it was
seven
the year of
wins.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah, and again, there was only two other films which won
Mm,
multiple awards, and that was Zone of Interest and Poor Things.
yeah.
So yeah, I wondered what you thought of the
I
awards.
thought that I was very pleased that Oppenheimer won Best Picture. I have to admit, I think it was one of my favorite films of last year. As much as I really did not want to like it, I don't think many people know this. I genuinely was so against it before I saw it, and I was annoyed to be proved wrong when I did finally see it.
Why were you annoyed about it? I actually don't know this.
I was so very convinced that I wouldn't enjoy it. 3 hours of of making a bomb. I wasn't convinced, but
Mhm.
I was at first annoyed that I did actually enjoy it. Now I'm at peace with it, and I'm very happy that it won Best Picture. And
Uh-huh.
obviously, Cillian Murphy is long overdue for that Oscar. So
I think that was just an inevitability.
yeah,
I think everyone everyone sort of knew with this,
yes.
like the people who were nominated for, Paul
Also,
Giamatti, Jeffrey Wright, great, but I think everyone kind of knew that it was an Oscar and waiting for
everyone.
Cillian Murphy on this one. I think it was almost they're honorary nominations. I think everyone kind of
Mhm.
knew where this was going for quite a while.
Yeah,
Because it is just a brilliant performance, and it really makes the film. I mean, it's just because that's what you walk away kind of, despite it having this, and obviously it has the bomb in it and explosion. You walk away probably thinking more about Cillian Murphy's face
I was just
more than
about to
anything.
say the final shot of his face is just imprinted in my brain at all times.
Yeah, I mean it's dazzlingly shot, and obviously if you were lucky enough to see it in IMAX, especially
Yeah.
IMAX 70 millimeter, obviously it's not something we do at Saffron Screen, but nonetheless it's very good in all formats. Just the largeness of that close up and just
Yeah.
how intimate it is, and the subtleties of what he's able to do with his face is just Like, yeah, like you say, it just is burned into your memory. Those are the bits you remember. Which is, it's such a way to make spectacle of someone's face,
Yes.
um, in that way. It's really, so I think if you haven't seen it on the big
What are you
screen,
doing?
if you, yeah, A, what are you doing? This
What are
film
you
has made nearly
doing?
$1 billion at this point, and
Exactly. It
it's
was
won
the
all the
film of the
Oscars.
summer. So
Yeah.
what are we doing?
Even if you have, maybe, you could see it at home. Obviously, it's on the it will be on digital
If
release
you have
now.
the chance to see it in the cinema, I would. I really would.
Yeah, I absolutely. It is one of those films that is made for the big screen. The
Yeah.
sound, obviously, we've been talking about Cillian Murphy's face and the cinematography, but the sound in it is also just great. Which I was interested, because I was sort of very interested, because the sound, for me, I love the sound in Oppenheimer. I thought the sound in Zone of Interest was also really good. I honestly couldn't pick between which one was better.
Oh wow.
Um, I thought they were, I thought they were both really great.
Mm.
So I thought it was quite impressive that Zone of Interest was able to beat Oppenheimer here. I was
Yes.
honestly not sure where they would go on it. Um, but yeah, the sound, even, and Saffron Screen has have quite a good sound system. But like we say, Oppenheimer wasn't the only thing that was winning awards.
Mm.
Of course, we have um, the second sort of biggest winner on there, which we haven't talked about on the podcast. But I think it was quite popular at Saffron Screen, was Poor Things with Emma Stone. Really big surprise here, I thought, with Poor Things. So it won 4 awards. I was really, really shocked on this one as well. Um, Poor Things won for Best Actress, Emma Stone
I
winning her
was about
second
to
Oscar,
say
beating out Lily Gladstone.
who was my choice, even though I haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon. I have seen clips of her performance and I was shocked that Emma Stone went out. Not that she doesn't rightly deserve it. I just thought that it was Lily
Mm.
Gladstone's.
A, for my money, I even think Carey Mulligan's performance in
Yes.
Maestro is also brilliant. I actually thought that was a better performance than Emma Stone's. Not to say Emma Stone's is bad, because it wasn't. But I thought what those, like Lily Gladstone and Carey Mulligan, were able to kind of give those more subtle performances. They're both bedridden, ill, dying women
Yeah.
in both of those, and whereas naturally Emma Stone's character has sort of got a lot more life to her. She's literally this woman with a child's brain inserted into her.
Yeah.
So to me, I thought it was kind of odd they wouldn't kind of give it to a more subtle and kind of
Mm.
nuanced performance like Lily Gladstone's. And I especially thought from an image perspective, if you know what I mean. Not that the Oscars necessarily should be concerned with their image; they should be concerned with giving it to who they really believe should win. But I always thought from an image perspective for them, they would want to have the first Native American woman to
Exactly that.
win an Oscar, instead of giving it to Emma Stone, who is great,
As
but
one
who's already
before.
won one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then everyone was just confused about the Best Picture category. If you watched what happened when they revealed it, Al Pacino reading the results just seemingly forgot or chose not to read all the other nominees, and he simply just said Oppenheimer awkwardly, and everyone was a bit confused. But again, maybe like the most of us, we all kind of knew Oppenheimer was probably going to win that award too, and didn't
I
care to
think it
read the other
was
nominees.
inevitable. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if our discussion of the Oscar ceremony of all the Oscar winners has piqued your interest and you'd like to form your own opinions, we have quite a few showings coming up in the next few weeks. We have our Best Picture winner, Oppenheimer, showing twice, once on Friday, the 29th of March, and once on Saturday, the 13th of April. And those are both at 7 p.m. So, if you can, I would.
Absolutely. And if you've never seen it before, see it on the big screen.
Yeah.
If
Don't
you've
miss your
seen it
chance.
already on the big screen, see it again, because
Mm,
it's really good. And yeah, just see it
100%.
again. Just see it as many times as you can.
As
If you
many
don't know,
times
I am a very big fan of this movie. So
as
I'm,
physically possible. Yeah.
yes.
We have The Zone of Interest rated a 12A coming up twice, once on Sunday the 31st of March at 7:30 and once on Sunday the 14th of April at 7:30 as well. That was the film that Zac was discussing, which I am very, very much wanting to see. I haven't had the chance, but I will as soon as I can.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely go see it. It's a thoughtful film, and definitely one that you'll come out probably thinking and feeling,
Mm,
but not probably just not crying, but
yeah,
definitely feeling something.
yeah. Sparking a lot of conversations, which is,
Exactly.
yeah,
And again, we have more even more Oscar winners showing. So we have for one night again on Monday, the 1st of April at 7:30. We have the holdovers showing again. And no, yes, it is on the 1st of April. It is really showing. It's not a joke. It will be there Monday, the 1st of April, 7:30. The holdovers again. I talked about this in our debut episode. Really love this film. Really sweet film. Really simple story, but with a lot of heart to it. It's got a Christmas tone to it, but it does not need to be Christmas to watch it.
I mean, the weather is still horrific, so really it feels seasonal as ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's something you could use to cheer yourself up.
Mm.
Also, you could use to cheer yourself up is what Amelie's been talking about today, American Fiction, which is really funny, really heartfelt as well. And you know, I'm sure also is going to spark quite a few interesting conversations. And that's playing on the Thursday, the 4th of April at 7:30, again for just one night only. So make sure you're in there.
Make sure you're there.
And finally, we are bringing back again Wicked Little Letters, which has been very popular. So we're bringing it back again for two more screenings. First of which it will be on Friday, the 12th of April at 7:30, and then it will play again for presumably its last time. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll say
For Monday, the 15th of April at 7:30.
those are selling fast, so do get your tickets in as soon as possible. It has been very popular. I know a lot of people have been coming out saying that they would love to see it again. So, yes, get your tickets as soon as. We also, coming up, have a few on-screen events. We have Solve Along a Murder, She Wrote, which is an immersive cinema experience on Saturday, the 20th of April, that has been selling fast since about January. So I would definitely get in your tickets for that event. Really looking forward to that one. We also have An American in Paris, the musical. April is looking to be a brilliant month, not only for upcoming movies, for returning movies as well, and for our upcoming events. So we really hope to see you at the cinema. And thank you so much for supporting this podcast in the past few months. It's been a blast to record. We will see you next month. Riley, hopefully, we'll be back for next episode.
Hopefully we'll have a full show, the regular crew back at it. And we'll be excited to talk about what's coming down the line again. So hope to see you guys all at Saffron Screen soon. And thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. See you next time.